Today, all over the world, there are thousands of Sino-Soviet intelligence agents with money to burn, looking for unsuspecting targets for exploitation among members of our force.
So today, what are we talking about, Austin?
Yeah, so what I figured we'd talk about just to kind of like loosen up the muscles and loosen up the tongue a little bit and just kind of make it a more relaxed and not so focused episode to where we have to think about one, movie or set of movies that we just watched. I kind of figured we would just talk about like it has to be our favorite movie. Like we've got to pick one movie. It's got to be one that we've watched like several times, and it's got to be one that we get express our love for, and one that we just can't shut up about. And so I was thinking like Matt's got to definitely have one of those movies, and I've got one of those movies. So I figured just to make it easier on us and make a really short and quick episode, we could kind of just do one where we talk about like either a movie, the most important movie to us, or just our favorite movie in general.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's good. We're gonna talk about our favorite movie, and then I also wanted to delve into a little bit because I'd like to talk about this to all my friends who watch movies who are interested in movies. Not only uh, favorite movie, but also what's the difference between your favorite movie and the best movie, because your favorite movie doesn't necessarily have to
Yeah.
be the best in your opinion. So, Austin, why don't you want to start us off with what your favorite movie is and why it's your favorite movie?
Yeah, so and I'll actually kind of tag on to um yeah, what we'll dive into with it being our favorite movie definitely is probably the best movie we've seen. I'll go ahead and say that my favorite movie isn't the best movie I've seen, but it's still a really fucking good movie for several reasons. And it's probably the most important movie to me because growing up, you kind of grow up with different things as a kid, and I think you and I both can say that we like grew up on superheroes, and like we grew up just on the young boy. We grew up on action, and we grew up on the when you grow up in the traditional you grow up around your guys, and you grow up you have guys that want to do they go hunting. We're just it's a very masculine style. Uh, where we grew up was like the gender roles were the men do these very manly things, the women do these very womanly things. But like, so we grew up liking these action heroes and superheroes and violence and fighting and good triumphing evil. And despite being around superheroes, the first big movie for me that I think captured my peak interest in cinema was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. It's the first movie in the Indiana Jones trilogy. What I like about it is that it's actually what a lot of people don't know, that it's actually like a chapter later in Indiana Jones's life. Temple of Doom is actually like an earlier chapter. But my favorite movie is Raiders because, well, geez, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Well, one is he's an action hero, and he was the first adventure action hero that was really put onto the big screen when like the box office blockbusters that just started coming out, right? So the term blockbuster came out like in the 70s when Jaws was so popular. It was lining up. Ticket lines were going around blocks. That's where the term blockbuster comes from, and I think that movie started with Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it did. But shortly after that, I mean, it was like the dawn of the blockbusters. You had Jaws and you had Star Wars in '77, and then in '81 was when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. And I mean, I was born in '95, so this wasn't like a movie theater experience for me. I was this movie was just kind of passed on to me from my uncle and my dad because that's what they grew up watching. And so it comes out in 1981, and it's around the time of Star Wars. It's right between no, it's right after Empire Strikes Back, and it's right before Return of the Jedi. So it's Harrison Ford's, not I guess his big break, but it's his like first big movie role, because like you had your action hero stars, like Arnold and all these guys that they just had their movies. Like the movies were their movies, and their star power alone was good enough to carry the movie. Well, Harrison Ford was in Star Wars before he was in Indiana Jones, but he wasn't like the main guy in Star Wars. That was Mark Hamill, and just like I mean, not to say nobody liked Han because everyone did love Han, but like that wasn't like his movie. That wasn't like his big break, like his big project that just sent him to the moon in terms of star power.
Mhm.
It was actually Raiders that did that. Raiders was like his Arnold. It was he headlined the movie. I mean, he's in the movie. He's top billed. I mean, and it's basically he jokes that it's the music, the famous music follows him everywhere he goes because I mean, yeah, most people love him for Han Solo, and most people love him for Jack Ryan or whatever the fuck all the other shit he's done. But I guess most people and I myself argue that it was really Raiders and the Indiana Jones trilogy that kind of launched him into that status. But no, it's just for me going back. No, I mean, yeah, it's a nostalgia thing, but I'm not. It's not pure nostalgia because, like, when you go back and watch it, it actually does hold up as a really good movie. Just upon like, there's so many good qualities about what make it a good movie, and the biggest thing to me is that it actually feels like it's a movie shot. Like there are actual real sets. The whole movie was like built for the film. I think the only big probably non-set scenes or scenes where extra like CGI is used is actually the very end. And the very end of the movie, is Belloc opening the Ark and the power of God striking all of the Nazis down. And if I recall, I mean that's really one of the only major scenes that requires non-practical effects. And even in that scene, they used like practical effects, like actual explosions with the cameras exploding, all the lights blowing and shit like that.
Don't they
So not
do? Don't they do some
Mhm.
weird in-camera technique for the ghosts? Isn't that like, or not the ghosts, or I guess the God, the Wrath of God, or whatever? Isn't it? Is it CGI or is it? Don't they use like some? I thought they used like in-camera tricks for the ghosts.
Maybe they may have used like I think they may have used like some kind of mirror technique or like some kind of light like a light or maybe like a yeah it may have been some kind of light dance or something like that because if you go back and watch it like there was something the camera followed the ghosts or the powers of God. They were kind of like dancing around the Nazis before they just all killed them. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look back, yeah, there's real light reflecting off of the actors' faces. So they did have to use some kind of practical light. Now I don't know if that was just some kind of like uh, a light refraction that just kind of went around like a light screen or like a light bulb that would just go around and glow, and then they would just kind of add the faces in later. They may have done that. But in terms of camera, but speaking of camera techniques, that was their they didn't actually use any like color grading or like any lighting meters. What's his name? Doug. I think his name's Doug Salone or something like that. The cinematographer. He didn't use a lighting meter, which is essentially like uh, a tool used in sets that kind of helps throw lighting around. So like you get certain angles and certain lights either to illuminate your actor's face or anything like that. But this movie, he actually just used so much like natural lighting in the environment that they built, and they didn't actually have like any light refractors on set. Like 100% of that movie just uses like actual shadows and light based on the set that they built. Like it's really impressive. And like, I mean, most of the movie is shot out in like a desert, or it's in just like out in a hallway or in a building, but they shot in so much natural light that if you go back and watch it, it's unbelievable because like so much of that movie is just captured, real time, real set, and no light grading or anything like that. Um, and also, it's just like so much of that movie is impressive in its like the big scene, or I guess the big chase, the big monumentous thing that everyone remembers from Raiders is probably a truck chase where the Nazis have the Ark and they're taking it away from the dig site to get it away from everyone else and to try and get it to Hitler eventually. And Indy has to chase it down with just a horse, and so he's following it on this out in fucking Egypt or Cairo. I can't remember. I think they shot it in Jordan or something like that. And like 100% of this entire sequence, except for maybe one shot, like all of it is shot pure on location, actual moving trucks, stuntmen moving from vehicle to vehicle, people falling out of the truck, people jumping, and people getting drugged behind the truck and shit like that. It's just
Mhm.
like you don't make them like that anymore. And if you do, like it just looks so fake and so. And I don't know if it's a safety thing anymore, but it's just absolutely insane to me that there was a guy that was basically being drugged behind a truck, like on his stomach, because Indy has to climb under the car because he doesn't want to get squashed between two vehicles. So he basically climbs under the truck and kind of like shimmies down the bottom of the truck. And then he takes his bullwhip and hooks it basically underneath the truck. And then it just drags him like 300 yards across the gravel. And that's an actual guy laying there,
Yeah.
like on the fucking ground, just being drugged by this truck going 40 miles an hour.
Mhm.
So it's just like it's so captivating and it's so different. And the
It,
story, in terms of story, it's different too because it was like I think you've probably heard this, but like Raiders can exist without Indiana Jones. Like if Indiana Jones wasn't in the movie, like probably most of it could have still played out the way it was. Have you
yeah,
heard that?
I haven't heard that, no, but
Yeah,
I can see it.
yeah. Because well, the reason people say that is because no matter what he does, he loses. So like no matter however it works out in the end, like Indiana Jones gets his ass kicked, like in every sense, like in every he loses, like in every basic scene, like he loses at the end of he literally loses at the in the beginning of the movie because he gets his fortune, he gets his fertility idol, he escapes the temple, and then there's a fucking a French archaeologist sitting there. He's like, okay, I'll be having that. It's like he fucking lost. Like, oh well, like he tried, and then he fucking he goes to Marion, and Marion and Indy go to Cairo, and then he loses Marion, and then like it's like well shit, and then he goes and finds the Ark. He finds the Well of the Souls, and then he finds the Ark, and then he loses the Ark.
Yeah.
So it's like in a way, like I was going to bring up this comparison towards the end of my spiel, but like you've professed your love for Captain America, and you've talked about how Captain America goes just beyond being like an American patriot, and how he's always going to do what's right, even if he has to get his ass kicked.
Mhm.
And I think Indiana Jones was my Captain America because no, even though he's still losing, like the fact that he's losing throughout this story and the fact that he's getting his ass kicked, he's still kind of being a pest to the Nazis. And so even though he's getting his ass kicked, he still keeps going. It's literally the I can do this all day spiel, like he just
Yeah.
keeps going and he's constantly getting his ass kicked throughout the whole movie and he constantly loses. And but people say that Raiders is interesting because without Indy, the Nazis would have opened the Ark anyway, and then like if the power of God would have struck them down anyway in the end. You know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people argue. So it's just like I think it kind of ties into the whole message about it's not necessarily the destination, it's the journey or something like that. Or but what he says is it's not it's not the years, it's the mileage. It's just it's the things you do and not necessarily how long you do them for.
Yeah, I was interested in this aspect of that film as well, because I was pretty sure you're going to pick Raiders. So,
Mhm.
um, my my thing is like, so I know you're a big Star Wars guy as well. So, and I've talked to people before who are Star Wars people, and they don't like the new trilogy. And I think the Star Wars has the stain of having a bunch of movies behind them. And I think it's kind of the similar with Marvel. They have a lot of movies behind them, so there's more chances to fail.
Right.
And you kind of loop in, you kind of forget that those like movies were good at one point,
Oh yeah.
so like, and they were new, and then you kind of get more of the same over and over again because that's what works, that's what sells. So they're gonna do that. And Indiana Jones has four movies. I think they have four movies in like a TV series that like was short lived, right?
Right.
So, what I was gonna say is that do you think that Indiana Jones is probably like because there are people who's like my favorite movie Star Wars, like the original Star Wars
Mhm.
or Empire
Mhm.
Strikes Back or whatever. Do you think that the original Indiana Jones is your favorite because it doesn't have the stain of like a prequel trilogy and then also a sequel trilogy as well?
Yeah, probably. I think.
And how do
Yeah,
you
and
feel about
also,
them doing a new one? That's also a good question.
yeah, the Indiana Jones was never. I don't think the original Indiana Jones movies were like what I would say today is they're not Happy Meals. What Martin Scorsese would say is they're not Happy Meal toys. Like they did not like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. Which I meant to mention, it wasn't actually Steven Spielberg that wrote this movie. A lot of people think that Steven was just like, I mean, he did direct these movies, but it was actually George Lucas who wrote all of the Indiana Jones movies, and so he doesn't get enough credit for that. But anyway, yeah, like the back in the '80s, they weren't like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were like, "Hey, let's write this movie because like we could create this hero and then we could sell a shit ton of merch off of him and like and license him and like sell fucking Funko Pops and sell fucking T-shirts and sell, like what the fuck ever, loot boxes or something." Like, if you go back and these movies were released just to be like movie theater experiences. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that hasn't really been stained by the assembly line movie. And I think even going back to, I think Temple of Doom maybe suffered a little bit from that because Raiders was such a big hit. They marketed the shit out of Temple of Doom back in 1983 or 84. They really marketed it heavier than the first movie. And, they sold more merchandise and shit like that. But that didn't take away from like the quality of the movie. And uh, that didn't take away from the craft of the movie and like the what the heart of the movie. Like nowadays you watch a movie and they're entertaining as hell. You can still watch an entertaining movie even today that comes out that's been coming out in the last 20 years. You can watch those and they're still fun, entertaining, and take you out of help you have that escapism. But they're still hollow because they seem to be all made the same.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's no like you don't feel a love of the craft through the movie, and you just definitely feel like they just like, I don't know how else to say it other than just they're doing the bare minimum, and I'm not
Yeah.
like I'm not thrilled at all about them making I'm cautious, but I'm not like thrilled about Harrison even coming back because by the time the fifth Indiana Jones movie comes out, Harrison Ford is going to be over 80 years old.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
just going to be like, Jesus Christ, like most people would be dead by now.
It's gonna be like
But
was it Robert De Niro in The Irishman where he's like kicking that guy and it's like he's like they de-aged him and it's like, oh, he's very clearly old as fuck.
yeah, exactly.
It looks like an 87-year-old man trying to beat someone up.
Yeah, yeah. And he's like, he goes to kick that dude, and he just barely, he can barely move and walk.
It's
Yeah,
like literally get a different actor. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I think also one thing that I kind of wanted to say about Indiana Jones is that um, there's a real in so people talk about Star Wars, right? And it's like a space opera, samurai movie in space type thing, right? There's like kind of elements. So like George Lucas is kind of like he's been criticized for this, and then people have said, "Oh, it's like actually garbage that he does this," which I think it's fine. But a lot of his movies are kind of like pastiches. They're kind of like a mixture of different other movies that he's seen and he likes.
Oh yeah.
So Star Wars is kind of a mixture of like Flash Gordon and like serials and and samurai
Exactly.
movies. Like there's a lot of like Kurosawa like
Mhm.
not homages, but there's a lot of Kurosawa overtones in Star Wars, and there's a lot of like that kind of
Mhm.
Flash Gordon as stuff. But like Indiana Jones was kind of a pastiche of a adventure serial, like
Oh yeah.
an adventure and stuff. But I think the difference between like Star Wars is, like I said, Star Wars has that stain of like being a multi-billion-dollar like franchise. So what happens is like it's like franchises instead of movies, right? So
Yeah.
the Star Wars franchise has so much lore and so many movies and so many books and comics and all this stuff, which is fine. It's fine to have lore, it's fine to have books, it's fine to have comics, but at the end of the day, Star Wars has become a genre in and of itself, and it's not it doesn't really have like this heart, right? Like anymore, at least. When it first came out, like the original trilogy, I feel kind of had more heart
Mhm.
than the
Oh
newer
yeah.
stuff, and that's something that I don't know. I might be putting words in your mouth, but do you think that maybe that's why Indiana Jones is appealing is because it does have that type, even though it's a pastiche, it does have that type of heart to it. I think it's got a lot of heart.
Yeah, it's well because I think it's very of Steven Spielberg to put heart and meaning into movies, and yeah, even the Star Wars, those first three Star Wars. I mean, they're so like, I mean, like I think everyone has said, and everyone, even including Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and all those guys in Star Wars, have said like this wasn't even supposed to be like this. Like George Lucas wanted to write a movie about like anti-imperialism and like the horrors and the cost of war and like the triumphing good over evil and how like no matter how it looks, imperialism is imperialism. And like he had like a George Lucas had to sit down with James Cameron, and like he basically said that like yeah, like my movie was, I was inspired by the rebels in Star Wars were basically like at the time the Viet Cong. Like that was who they were. That's who I was getting my inspiration from. Like
Mm-hmm.
real world, like in terms of fighting, because like these rebels were just like guerrilla fighters and stuff like that. And when you add some to for something to have heart, I think what most people mean by when something has heart, it means like it appeals to your humanity in a sense. Like um, it appeals to your humanity and it makes you feel like there's some good uh, to come of it, and there's a really good message there, and there's not just it doesn't exist just to be a entertaining, good and evil, like cookie
Well,
cutter. I mean, even though Star Wars is insanely like stereotypical good and evil, but like
I think like I don't know. I think that like saying something has heart. It's kind of like saying a movie has heart is like saying a director has vision or saying that a writer has a voice, right? It's kind of like
oh yeah,
this
yeah.
catch-all term. Um, but I think that when I say something has heart, it
Mhm.
kind of means that there's a vision behind it, and by vision I mean something that's natural that
Oh yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
comes about from
Something
the
organic.
director.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so when I say something is heart, it means like the director's heart is in the movie. So
Right.
they're making this film and it's like, they're making a film, right? And
Hmm.
I think a lot of times with newer movies, especially um
Hmm.
like I said, new Star Wars movies, there's no heart because there's no vision there. There's no director's vision.
Hmm.
And what it is it's literally a manufactured product.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, where so like a film is art, whereas
Hmm.
I think this is what I told you, like what we can talk about a little later on, but like this is what kind of what I told you where I think Martin Scorsese's right in
Hmm.
that Marvel movies aren't films because they're movies. They don't
Right.
they have like there are some that are directors have visions and they
Hmm.
execute them and they're good and I can consider them films, right? But then there's a lot of them that feel manufactured, like you just kind of put them in an algorithm and they kind of
Hmm.
spit out this is what needs to
Yeah.
happen here, 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 and here.
Yeah, exactly. And even J.J. Abrams, like, retroactively has come out and said, "Yeah, we didn't actually have any real overarching plan for Star Wars." He was like, "We just kind of threw it all together." Like, Jesus Christ.
What a really bad filmmaker. We can
Yeah,
talk
for
about
real.
that maybe one day, but Jesus Christ, such a bad
Yeah,
J.J. Abrams is so bad
yeah. It's purely
about
it's
everything.
we can talk. Yeah, we'll talk about directors on another episode. Um, but yeah, I mean that's kind of. I mean, I could talk about Raiders all day, and I know we don't have a lot of time. And I was going to ask you. I mean, we've got to do a fantasy football draft here in a little bit. Did you want to talk about your movie, or do you want to come back later this week and then we can do a whole episode on your favorite movie?
Yeah, let's just talk about. I'll talk about my movie really quick, and then we can just
Okay.
run down. I mean, we got some time. So,
Oh, okay.
um, so my thing is that my favorite movie, and it's similar to yours, right? And it's not similar to yours, but it's
For
similar
similar
of why
reasons.
it's my favorite movie. So I have two movies in my life that I tell
Mhm.
people were hugely influential on me as a person, right? And it's just
Mhm.
like because they both came at a time in my life. One came at a time when I was younger in my life to where I was like,
Mhm.
oh shit, this is movies. And then the second one came at a time in my life where I was like, oh shit, this is later on. Um, so
Right.
where I've always liked movies, but one made me fall in love with movies to begin with, and then the second one made me like re-fall in love with movies and realize that movies can be like,
Mhm.
more than entertainment. They can be art. So I'll just say this: the original one that happened for me was Jurassic Park, the original, which I
Mhm.
saw when I was a kid, and I was like, and I still love. It's a great movie. It's definitely in the top 10. And that was like a holy shit, like movies exist and are awesome,
Yeah,
for
exactly.
me.
Yeah.
And that's something like a lot of people say that, it's kind of like it's
Mhm.
kind of cliche, but that really happened to me when I saw Jurassic Park for the first time. I was like, damn, because like I was at the age,
Mhm.
it was around the time when uh
Yeah.
I would have been liking dinosaurs. So and then I saw it and was like, what the fuck? Like these dinosaurs are real, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, like
Um,
it was such a gripping thing. It was like you believe that was an actual thing, you know.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
that was literally movie magic to me, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Whoa, it's crazy." Um, yeah, another franchise that got destroyed, you
Yeah.
know, because they made
by
more,
by manufacturing assembly lines, yeah.
because they literally just decided to make more.
Yeah.
But that's not my favorite movie. My favorite movie actually is the second time that happened because it kind of kickstarted this second like renaissance of me
Mhm.
enjoying movies, and that's Silver Linings Playbook. Um, right, so it came out 2011. It was David O. Russell directed it, starring Bradley
Mhm.
Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence. It's funny. It's funny earlier. So you said that your favorite was Raiders because like when you grew up, it was like a masculine thing, which is hilarious. The Silver Linings Playbook is my favorite, right? Hyper, very non-hyper masculine
Yeah,
movie.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, but Silver Linings Playbook is my favorite because I always tell people I'm like it's the perfect Matt movie, right? It's the perfect movie for Matt, and it's because it's a love story that it's got like football in it. It's got which I'm not like I'm not a huge football guy, but it's
Mhm.
got football in it, which is great. It's got humor and it's about it's a love story, but it's about mental illness ostensibly, right?
Mhm.
Because the main character Pat Saltano is he's in jail. He's not in jail. Sorry, he's in a mental like a
Is it like a
psych.
correctional facility or something like that,
Right,
right?
he's like in a psych facility for
Yeah.
because he was undiagnosed bipolar with schizophrenic
Mhm.
episodes,
Mhm.
and what happened was he came home early. He found his wife cheating on him his wife was an English teacher, and then he
Mhm.
found her cheating on him with the history teacher, and he was a substitute history teacher. So he like beats him and almost kills him. So they bring him to jail, and uh because they found out that oh, he's actually undiagnosed bipolar, and there's a lot like his father has mental problems. He has like anger issues and everything. And so the movie's about him trying to get into shape and better himself to reconnect with his wife, who currently has a restraining order against him. And he meets Jennifer Lawrence, right, who is a widower. She's a widow because her police officer husband died, and she has a lot of like, mental illnesses as well. And it's them meeting and connecting and realizing that, long story long, they can love each other, right? And it's about, Pat has to be unselfish, right? He has to be unselfish for both Tiffany, which is Jennifer Lawrence character's name, and his wife, because he's holding on to his wife
Mhm.
uh, for too long. Um, and it, uh, it's about him like accepting himself too, and realizing, and I really like the message of it too. it's so he says that there's a silver lining. There's always a silver lining, and it's like going to get better. And so he goes through this horrible thing, this horrible emotional turmoil, and ends up, through dance and expression with Tiffany, ends up falling in love again, like with a different person, and realizing like, oh well, I do, my marriage was loveless. I need to let go, and
Right.
it's great. And there's a lot of great scenes in that movie. It's really funny. And let me just tell you this right now. David O. Russell's movie is sometimes you'll hear me say this, sometimes you won't. But this is one instance where the movie's a lot better than the book. The book is bad. It's based off.
Oh yeah, it is a book. I forgot about that.
Yeah, the book is bad. I read the book recently, but I watched that movie every single year since it's come out. I've watched it probably once or twice a year. I usually watch it either around my birthday or Thanksgiving or Christmas. Yeah, so why? So this movie came at a time where I was watching movies, but I wasn't like, I didn't think I didn't really think that much about them critically. I was just kind of like watching movies to watch them. It was just like entertainment for me. And then this movie comes out and I was like, oh wow, like it's an incredible movie. And it like makes me think about all these complex things. And, David O. Russell became one of my favorite directors just because that movie, right, was so good.
What else did he direct? Was it American Hustle?
He directed American Hustle.
Yeah, that's right.
He directed I Heart Huckabees, which is ironically is one of Jennifer Lawrence's favorite movie. Great film.
Cool. Yeah.
He directed Three Kings, which if you haven't seen Three Kings, is very prescient right now with what's happening in Afghanistan. Right? It's about Desert Storm. It's got George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg. He directed The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg. It's a good movie. Yeah, so he's done a lot of great movies. His last one was kind of a stinker, but we can forgive him for that.
Which one was his last one?
I'm pretty sure. I think it was Joy. I'm almost 100% certain that it was the movie called Joy.
Oh yeah, we went and saw that, didn't we?
It was bad. Yeah,
it was pretty terrible. Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
I remember us both like going. It was so weird. I was like, the first half of it was like the worst movie we'd ever seen, and then the second half was like, okay, this is all right.
Yeah, that was when she designs the mop, right? Like Bradley Cooper sells it on TV and some shit like that. And she becomes like the infomercial girl. Yeah. That wasn't really. I remember like the last 90 minutes or maybe the last 30 minutes just being like, whoa, like the pace just picked up, and like now we see her growing as a character, and now we see her changing, and now she's feeling happier again, and then all of a sudden it's like, is she really happy again? Like it seems like this has just caused her more problems than anything. So yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember that movie. I mean, yeah, I think that was one of the last movies. I think that was one of the last movies I saw that in theaters that maybe wasn't like a big blockbuster movie. And that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, his next movie, it doesn't have any. It doesn't have a title. It doesn't have plot. It's literally the only thing. There's 4 photos on there, and like it's Christian Bale, John David Washington, and Margot Robbie in like old timey dress.
That's right.
It. But yeah, so the reason I guess like to make a long story short, the reason that's I'm sorry, it came out in 2012. Silver Linings Playbook did.
I was going to ask, like, so is it the perfect movie because like it has basically the best like elements of being a human? Because like I think when I go back and think about that movie and I think about like Bradley Cooper, I do remember like being frustrated with like, I think that's what I found myself reflecting on, being frustrated with Pat, because Pat was just kind of like an asshole, and I don't think like he doesn't realize that how he comes off is that way, and I don't even think he takes medication for it in the movie, right? Does he take medication for it?
He tries not to because he doesn't like how the medication makes him feel.
That's right. Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
also
and he
says it
like
bloats him, and he wants to work out more. So he wants to
yeah.
be fit.
Yeah. I remember this has stuck with me for some reason, but that was one of the first movies I saw where I saw a character out jogging in a trash bag. And I was like,
Mhm.
why the fuck is he doing that?
Yeah, I've actually seen that. Like, I've never saw that before, and then after a while, uh, after a while, I started seeing that like at the gym and stuff. I started seeing guys wear trash bags and
Mhm,
stuff. I still see that some every once in a while. Guys like out jogging
mhm.
wearing a hoodie and trash bags. It's like weird.
Yeah.
It's to sweat more. But
Mhm,
um, yeah, I mean that's the reason I say it's a perfect Matt movie is because all the elements are there that I like in movies. So like I'm really cheesy. I really like a good romance, right?
yeah. Mhm,
Um, I like a good romance, but I really like there's a sad like my favorite anime is Your Lie in April, and it's like it's because it's like sad, but it's like heartwarming, and that's what I really like about Silver Linings Playbook is it's like sad because he's like mentally ill,
mhm,
and there's like a lot going on, and he's like doesn't realize, like you said, he's kind of an asshole. He doesn't kind of realize it because he's
mhm,
got these mental problems and he can't help it, and like he's trying his hardest, and he can't do it, like even through
mhm,
his extreme dedication, like he's failing, and I'm a sucker for this like bittersweet sad like happy ending
mhm.
where the movie you're kind of like, even though he's like a dick in certain instances, he's a lovable guy, and
Right.
you want him to succeed in getting back together with his wife, and then you realize that's not what he should do, even though that's what you want him to do. You're rooting
Mhm,
for him to get back together with his wife, and then you realize, oh wait, like actually, you know, Jennifer Lawrence's character is way better. It doesn't seem like she would be, but she is. She's way better for him
oh
in
yeah.
terms of like, and he's a better match for her too because he's not a good match for his wife, right? So there's a bittersweet like there's something that happens there that you know you don't you don't originally want to happen, but when it happens, you go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And when you spend a lot of time, I mean, I think what's also important for Pat in that movie is like you see how his family is, and like his family loves the Philadelphia Eagles so much that they're always like, I think they're always like wanting him to like watch like he's like, you guys should just like, or they're telling Pat like, hey, you just don't worry about your wife, like just hang out with us all the time and just help us watch the Eagles. And he's like, I mean, I like watching the Eagles too, but like I'm not that crazy about it. You can tell he's not like super into his family, but at the same time, like he cares about them, and he's also trying to seek something else. And I think I like that too because you love your family, but like you don't want to feel like you're trapped with them. And
Hmm.
I definitely feel like part of Pat's um, an important part of Pat's story is that he's not like, not to say his family's not important, but like you can tell by the way his family is that they haven't been like super supportive to him, but like they
Right.
also don't fully quite understand him. They just still want him to be around because they're family. And I think to him, he's like it's a sense of obligation because they're family. Like
Hmm.
you can tell that like he really is infatuated with Jennifer Lawrence's character, and like he sees something there and he feels something with her that he doesn't feel with his family or anyone else.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I think he definitely got out of his comfort zone with the dance routine, and like that's like definitely getting out of his comfort zone for him. And I think that's also an important thing about when it comes to like meeting someone and like wanting to be with someone is how out of your comfort zone it is. And
Hmm.
I really like that about the movie too.
Yeah. I think all that's to be
Mhm.
said. Also, I just wanted to I think that was a good discussion on both ends, just talking about our favorite movies. Um, and I just wanted to wrap up with this. So I always, like I said, I always
Mhm.
talk to like my film loving friends about um what's the difference between the best movie and your favorite movie, right? And I say your favorite movie can be anything, right? And it's always
Mhm.
it's always it's always subjective, right?
Subjective, yeah.
It's always subjective about your favorite or both are, best in my opinion is, favorite, my favorite
Mhm.
is. So I have two different answers. I always say my favorite movie, Silver Linings Playbook. I think the best movie is The Shawshank Redemption, right? So like the reason that is because I think there's a difference, and I think you're allowed to, because a lot of people think that if you say my favorite movie is, then it
Mhm.
also means the best movie is. Um, and I think there's a big difference between that. I think you can kind of separate the two, um, where the discussion leads to,
Mhm.
the best movie is this because of this, and this, like the cinematography, the acting, the directing, whatever. And then that movie could be the best, but it also doesn't hit you the same as your favorite movie because, like, if you think the best movie is Pulp Fiction or whatever, right? You say the best movie is Pulp Fiction, but my favorite movie is like Finding Nemo. It's like, well, why is
Right.
your favorite movie is Finding Nemo because of like X,
Yeah.
Y, and
The way
Z?
it makes you feel. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think in ultimately a movie going experience is like a visceral like uh experience, emotional experience. So um long story long, to cut this discussion completely short, it's I think that feeling is something that you can separate from what you
Mhm.
think is the craft of like movie making.
Mhm.
So I didn't know if you had anything else to add, but
I would.
that's all.
I'll just put in my. I'll put in my 2 cents on what I think the best film I've ever seen was. I think the best movie I've ever seen was Back to the Future.
Okay.
Because there's so much. It's. I feel like Back to the Future is like a celebration of what movie making should be,
Mm-hmm.
and like Back to the Future also doesn't exist in like a assembly line movie culture. Like most people like screenplay almost like unanimously agree it's almost like the perfect screenplay. It's like the perfect adaptation of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
um and just because it really is like a celebration of what a movie can be, and it's like as your emotion has stakes, and oh my god, I think just because Back to the Future is the best movie I've seen because of how high the stakes are, and like 30 minutes in, like that's where the stakes start, because like that's when shit gets real. And like every moment in that movie feels so important. And that's like because it's a race against time, but it's also like preserving like it's preserving another life. And so like every moment is insanely important to how everything else is going to play out. And that's why it's really hard to do time movies, like time travel movies like that.
Mm-hmm.
um but I think that's why I think Back to the Future, just based on that alone, is the best movie. It's not my favorite movie, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
best movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think we can wrap it up there.
Mhm.
We got to get to our draft. So, yeah, so I guess we'll discuss what our next topic is next week. We'll just give a little surprise for you guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we just wanted to give you that episode. So, so this podcast is going to be, it's going to be some contemporary movies, some old movies that we review, but we're also
Mhm.
going to give you topics like today. So we just wanted to give you our second episode, this episode, which is the topic of our favorite movies, and then also that we'll add a discussion of best movies, just so you can get to know us better. But yeah, we will have more topics for you
Mhm.
guys next week. So I guess we will see you guys later.
See you guys. Writer.